The year was 2015. Spokane, Washington, carried the chill of early November, leaves dampened by the first persistent rains of the season. Streetlights glimmered against wet asphalt, their reflections fractured into the dark, empty corners of alleys. It was in this quiet, unassuming cityscape that Deanne Hastings vanished, her last known footsteps traced not in a forest or abandoned field, but along the cold streets of downtown Spokane. Deanne had spent her day immersed in the hopeful beginnings of a new life, attending her first day at cosmetology school, returning home to her children, sharing a fleeting warmth with them. But something fractured that evening. Moments that would seem ordinary to an outsider, the walk to a grocery store, the brief interaction with strangers, became threads in a pattern that would unravel into confusion, fear, and unanswered questions. She claimed she had been drugged, kidnapped, though no physical evidence immediately confirmed her words. By midnight she was gone, leaving behind only a locked car, a note, and the haunting emptiness of absence. If you linger too long on these streets, Spokane's shadows might whisper questions you are not prepared to answer. Consider subscribing to follow every step of Deanne's disappearance, every clue that defies explanation. P1 Investigation Phase 1. Deanne Hastings was a mother, a daughter, a woman at the cusp of new beginnings. On November 3, 2015, she attended her first cosmetology class at Glendale Beauty Academy. According to her fiancé Mike Tibbetts, she had been excited, enthusiastic, ready to rebuild her life, eager to embrace this new chapter. That evening, after returning home, her 17-year-old son Hayden and his girlfriend visited briefly. The mundane rhythms of family life seemed to persist. Laughter, shared nails, casual conversation before the ordinary gave way to the inexplicable. Shortly after, Deanne left for Lotta Trading Company, a nearby grocery store. She purchased a mix of items: energy drinks, string cheese, vodka, cigarettes, birthday candles. Trivial in isolation, but significant in context. Surveillance footage captured her movement in the store, her gestures erratic, her gaze continually scanning over her shoulder. The first calls to 911 were made around this time, by strangers who encountered her disoriented, claiming she had been drugged. One salon owner, recalling the encounter, reported Deanne addressing her as mommy, insisting on the abduction. Minutes later, two women encountered her again, offering help she refused. By 10 p.m. Mike returned home. A note awaited him, explaining a simple errand to the store at the end of a productive day. When she did not return, concern escalated rapidly. Around 11:30 p.m., he began a personal search, tracing her steps, ultimately locating her car across from the knitting factory downtown. Locked keys, phone, and purse inside. Deanne herself was absent. The next morning, November 5th, Mike contacted her school. She had not attended. Her credit cards were used again at the same grocery store she had visited hours before disappearing. The surveillance footage revealed her wandering, visibly disoriented, her hands waving, eyes darting. The initial investigation, cold and procedural, began assembling fragments of a night that seemed to bend logic. By November 7th, a grocery store employee contacted Mike, recounting time spent with Deanne near the knitting factory. She had shared a cigarette, gone to his home, returned alone the next day to purchase cigarettes, then vanished once more. Days later, multiple uses of Deanne's credit cards across Spokane were recorded. Surveillance showed a man, later identified as Randy Riley, along with two associates, using her cards. Riley would claim she had given him her cards voluntarily, that she had walked into the woods and never returned. His story shifted under questioning, the details inconsistent, but the trail of her absence remained cold, unbroken. Community searches commenced, neighbors and friends forming search parties across Spokane. Detective Jeff Barrington of the Spokane Police Major Crimes Unit was assigned to the case on November 8th, examining cell records, card usage, and last known locations. Each piece of evidence threaded a narrative that was both meticulous and maddeningly incomplete. The city's streets held a stillness that did not yield answers. The investigation pressed forward cautiously, methodically, as each witness and lead was catalogued, interrogated, and scrutinized. Those who knew her, those who had fleeting encounters that night, all contributed fragments that, when pieced together, formed a chilling mosaic of uncertainty. Her disappearance was no longer a question of where she had gone. It was a study in absence, in the gaps between her movements and the city that swallowed them. If you have observed anything unusual in your own city streets, any moment that unsettled your sense of reality, leave a comment below. Share what you saw. It may be relevant in ways none of us yet understand. The days following Deanne Hastings' disappearance were marked not only by absence but by anomalies that resisted simple explanation. As investigators combed through footage and eyewitness accounts, subtle irregularities began to surface. Surveillance cameras captured her erratic movements at the Lotta Trading Company, gestures that seemed rehearsed yet hesitant, eyes shifting, lips parting in whispered words inaudible to all but her. Later, when her credit cards were used, the footage recorded a man, Randy Riley, accompanied by two others, yet inconsistencies plagued each narrative. Their paths through Spokane contradicted witness accounts, and timestamps seemed to misalign with observable events. Even the physical landscape offered peculiarities. Downtown Spokane's streets were familiar, yet when investigators retraced Deanne's route near the knitting factory, footprints appeared that led into alleys and then vanished entirely, as if she had stepped into the night itself. Compasses used by search parties occasionally fluctuated without explanation. Equipment once dependable registered interference in the very zones where she had last been seen. Nothing conclusive. Yet the recurrence of these subtle disruptions suggested something more than mere oversight or misremembered detail. Witnesses described interactions that bordered on surreal. Deanne, disoriented, had requested to call her family but refused assistance when offered. She appeared lucid in some moments, distant in others, her focus fleeting. The contrast between these accounts and the mechanical precision of credit card usage and surveillance tracking created an unsettling tension, behavior inconsistent. Yet her presence in the city documented beyond doubt. Investigators noted these disruptions, but could not attribute them to technical malfunction alone. The city itself seemed to withhold its answers. Each trace, each irregularity, threaded a layer of ambiguity over the ongoing inquiry. If these peculiarities stir questions in your mind, consider liking this video, as attention to detail might illuminate what remains hidden. Deanne Hastings was more than a set of movements on surveillance footage. More than a missing person file, she was a mother, fiercely devoted to her 3 children, a partner planning a future with Mike. Her friends describe her as loving, generous, endlessly attentive to those she cared for. On the morning of November 3rd, she had prepared for a new chapter, attending cosmetology school with an enthusiasm that seemed boundless. That day she texted her son Hayden, sharing pride in her accomplishments, signaling a life moving forward. Yet the human details of her disappearance cannot be understated. Her note to Mike, discovered late that evening, was brief but telling. She had finished her nails, enjoyed her class, and intended only a quick trip to the store. The ordinary minutiae of life, nail polish, errands, cigarettes, string cheese, become haunting under the lens of absence. Mike's searches were not just procedural, they were intimate, desperate attempts to restore the warmth of presence to a space suddenly cold. Friends, too, expressed disbelief, a quiet, persistent worry. Amanda, a close confidant, remarked on the increasing urgency as days passed, emphasizing how the Spokane cold only deepened the sense of vulnerability. Personal effects became markers of the unresolved. Her purse and phone abandoned in the car, her credit cards later used by strangers, and the eventual discovery of her identification near a market all stood as fragments of her existence suspended in the city. Investigators could chart her movements, yet they could not account for her choices, her intentions, her presence as a living, breathing individual whose life had intersected with countless others in fleeting, ordinary ways. Deanne's story, humanized through these details, underscores the duality of the case, the emotional weight of her relationships, and the forensic, methodical investigation that frames her disappearance. Each note, each erratic movement, each witness account forms a portrait of a life abruptly paused, a presence that continues to ripple through those left behind. As the investigation progressed, conflicting details began to emerge from the accounts of those who had been with Deanne on the night she vanished. Randy Riley, initially cooperative, provided an account that shifted over time. He claimed she had voluntarily given him her credit cards, had walked into the woods to use the bathroom, and never returned. Later, he amended his story, placing her coat and shoes on a hill near the woods, along with her credit cards, while admitting to discarding her license near a Spokane deli. James, his friend, corroborated parts of the story but added that when Randy returned, Deanne had resisted leaving the spot she had chosen. Each retelling introduced subtle contradictions, leaving investigators to-way reliability against circumstantial evidence. Cell phone metadata and credit card logs offered fragments of location, but these too seemed to produce irregularities. Timestamps misaligned with witness reports. GPS data suggested positions inconsistent with observed movements. These discrepancies compelled detectives to examine each lead meticulously, attempting to reconcile technical data with human testimony. Surveillance footage further complicated the narrative. Riley and his associates were clearly seen using Deanne's cards, but her physical whereabouts remained unaccounted for. A discovery location emerged during a retracing of her steps near downtown Spokane, a set of personal belongings belonging to Deanne, isolated and untouched, as if abandoned deliberately. The evidence was tangible yet mute. It provided confirmation of her presence but no insight into her departure. Law enforcement cataloged these findings, recognizing the challenge of interpreting an absence at spoken fragments, a trail that simultaneously existed and eluded comprehension. Observers of the case noted the unsettling pattern of minor, repeated inconsistencies at items placed, locations reported, times documented. No single piece offered clarity, yet together they formed a mosaic that demanded attention, that suggested forces of circumstance, human or otherwise, were at play in ways that defied immediate logic. If you have theories or notice details that others may have overlooked, leave a comment below. Sometimes the smallest observation becomes the keystone of understanding. Months turned into years, Yet Deanne Hastings remained absent, her disappearance unresolved. Spokane's streets continued their quiet rhythms, indifferent to the echoes of her last known movements. Investigators revisited timelines, re-examined surveillance, and cross-checked witness statements, but each lead seemed to fracture upon closer inspection. Footprints vanished into the city's shadows, surveillance inconsistencies lingered, and credit card usage provided only fragments of her presence. Never explanation. Her family, friends, and the community maintained a vigilant search, retracing the paths she might have taken, scanning the woods and alleyways for the faintest sign. Mike Tibbetts drove the same routes, revisited the same stores, each day a meditation on absence. Objects connected to her, a note, a coat, abandoned shoes, served as silent witnesses, their meaning partially obscured, their testimony incomplete. At times, subtle anomalies persisted: static on radios during searches, compasses that wavered inexplicably, fleeting impressions in peripheral vision, elements that could be dismissed as coincidence yet left an unsettling impression. The boundaries between reality and uncertainty remained porous. If you wish to follow the meticulous reconstruction of cases like Deanne's, to trace each movement, each moment, consider subscribing. The attention to the small, the overlooked, often illuminates what the broader narrative conceals. Her story remains suspended, unresolved, and as the Spokane nights deepen, a single chilling question lingers in the cold air: where did she go, and why has the city returned her to us in fragments alone?